Hi, I'm Carl Smazinski, the Compliance Officer here at CWI, and today we're going to talk a little bit about compliance issues. We're going to talk about HIPAA. We're going to go over some of the mandatory federal and state requirements that we have to do each year when we have these refresher courses that we put on. And again, we're going to talk about your obligations to report and recognize compliance issues and concerns. So what is compliance? Well, simply following rules or requests is compliance. At CWI, we talk about compliance, we talk about laws, rules, regulations, policies, procedures, administrative memos, all those things that go into the rules and regs that we have to contend with every day at work. We talk about ethics, always acting in the best interests of the people we serve. Again, it's embodied in our code of conduct. And again, CWI's philosophy regarding compliance and ethics is that we will comply with all applicable federal and state laws, rules, and regulations, and not engage or tolerate any unethical or illegal activities. What is our compliance program? Well, it's based on and requires the full support and commitment of everyone. It flows down from the board of directors through senior management on down to every individual who works here at CWI. Provides for education and training, including this annual refresher training. We conduct investigations into allegations of misconduct. We monitor activities, we do internal audits, and we assess areas of risk within the agency. So we like to take a proactive approach here to compliance. Basically, it's designed to, our compliance program, prevent accidental and intentional violations of law, detect any violations if they occur, and correct any instances of non-compliance that we become aware of. So again, it's part of everybody's job and depends on everyone's participation for continued success. CWI's Code of Conduct is kind of like the Bible as far as CWI is concerned. Following it is mandatory for all board members, officers, staff, and affiliated persons. Provides an overview of unacceptable conduct or performance and examples of some of the bad behaviors that may occur. Again, failure to comply is a serious matter, can lead to disciplinary action. So bottom line is, we expect anyone finding themselves in a situation involving potential conflicts of interest, for example, that you will promptly report that. Keep management informed. Document services, record your transactions accurately, comply with policies and procedures. Basically, function honestly while you're on the job, maintain confidentiality, agency, staff information, HIPAA-related issues. Discrimination and harassment is another thing that's covered by the Code of Conduct. And again, an obligation to report violations and concerns if you become aware of a situation. So what should you do? If a difficult situation presents itself and you're not quite sure, you should ask yourself the following questions. Is there a law or regulation that governs the situation? If so, you should follow that law. Is there a policy or procedure that covers the situation? We have a lot of policies and procedures that are very specific to the jobs that you perform. Would your action be consistent with our commitment to having high ethical standards? How would your actions be seen by someone outside the agency? Would you feel comfortable explaining your behavior to your friends or family? And again, what actions would the most ethical person you know take? This is what we would expect you to do. If you have questions or concerns, there's many resources available. Again, determine if there's a law, regulation, policy, procedure, or standard. Ask your supervisor. Often they're the first person that you can get to, and they're very knowledgeable about the rules and regulations that relate to the job that you're doing. You can also contact Human Resources. You can contact me at the Compliance Office. You can contact our Quality Assurance staff, or you can actually contact us through the Compliance Hotline if for some reason you want to remain anonymous and you have a concern. What do we expect from staff here at CWI? Well, we expect everyone to be educated and trained to be able to comply with all the laws, rules, policies, and procedures that your job entails. And again, spotting potential concerns. unethical or illegal behavior, unnecessary services, discriminatory treatment, billing errors, misuse of property, and fraud, waste, or abuse obviously is something. We just want to make sure that everyone knows the rules. We're talking about fraud, waste, and abuse. One of the mandatory items that we have to cover each year relates to false claims and federal and state requirements as that relates to false claims. Now, both the federal and state government have false claim acts that prescribe penalties for violations of the act and impose liabilities on any person or agency who submits claims that they know to be false. Submitting bills for services that haven't been provided, for example, or records you know or should know are false, is a violation of the False Claims Act. And those False Claims Acts include liabilities for obtaining money from which we might not be entitled. So again, there are concerns, there are consequences to violating the False Claims Act. It's a violation to submit claims for payment with false and untrue information. And there are penalties, including civil penalties, between up to $11,000 per violation plus 3 times the amount of damages. So you can see that there are some dire consequences if we don't follow the law. Most of what we do here relates to Medicaid, our prime revenue source. So as a result, we concentrate a lot on Medicaid fraud and abuse, and that kind of refers to intentional deception that would result in benefit to an individual or an organization. So again, we're talking about things that you're well aware of: billing for services that weren't furnished, signing blank records, falsifying information, misrepresenting services, those type of things. We have to be very careful when we deal with Medicaid. When we come across instances where we think that documentation, for example, is not correct, we file invalid claim reports and we remit the money back to the state government and the federal government. We talk about Medicaid fraud and abuse, again, practices that lead to unnecessary costs, charging for services or supplies excessively, providing services that don't meet professional standards. Those type of things are something that we want to avoid. Again, reporting compliance concerns, we expect everyone, if you have a concern or you become aware of a situation, to report it. We would recommend that you go through the chain of command when reporting compliance issues or any other observed or suspected HIPAA breach, for example. And I'll remind you again that the federal and state laws, as well as CWI's own policies, provide whistleblower protections to employees who report or undertake actions to ensure that our billing practices are appropriate. So again, no one's going to be punished for calling the hotline or reporting a compliance-related issue. And again, for further questions, you can refer to CWI's policy on EasyLink, and it has information on both the federal and state False Claims Acts and whistleblower protections. We want to make it very clear that we handle your concerns seriously. All reported concerns will be reviewed, and any suspected violation brought to our attention will be reviewed promptly and reported to the appropriate parties. Again, we'll try to keep information as confidential as possible and share it with those individuals who need to know only. But sometimes, we need to basically provide information beyond that to correct situations as required by law. And again, what we deal with most? Well, here, when it boils down to Medicaid reimbursement, it's records and documentation. And again, it's important that we here at the CWI follow Medicaid documentation rules to protect the agency and obviously individuals to protect themselves, making sure, for example, that you're dealing with current documents, whether that's an ISP or a habilitation plan. Never documenting anything you haven't done or observed, and, not attempting to hide any errors. So again, we're talking about records, which here, regardless of format, are all information that's created or used in the course of agency business. Again, we're talking about HIPAA as well when we deal with records, not just documentation issues, but we have HIPAA responsibilities because of the protected health information status of records here at CWI. So we talk about safeguarding patient information, whether that's written or electronic, and referring complaints about HIPAA violations immediately, reporting any actual or potential violations of policies and procedures to either the HIPAA privacy officer, who is our quality assurance director, or to me, the compliance officer, or go to your supervisor. But just to be familiar with and adhere to HIPAA policies and procedures is a good thing to do. We're talking about records. CWI has been in the process of migrating from paper to electronic record keeping over the past few years. We're going to be in the process getting into 2017 of migrating pretty much most of the operations here, the program areas, into an electronic record keeping system. So that's going to be a good thing for the agency, something that's required, something that the federal and state government has been pushing agencies like CWI to get into. And of course, the status of our records as protected health information is another concern that relates and is better served by having electronic record keeping. There are considerable advantages, but some risks that, again, we have to consider as we migrate over to electronic record keeping. They don't eradicate human error, so people are going to have to be careful to ensure that they log in properly. Quality, again, is something that we're very concerned with, and we want to ensure that regardless of how we keep our records, that we have good quality. Keep in mind that garbage in equals garbage out, so we want to just make sure that we're doing things properly and with a lot of foresight. And again, being contemporaneous is even more critical. When you are entering information to electronic records, obviously that it's going to record that information and it's going to be set in stone. So again, HIPAA awareness again is critical as well. Access to records, security, information, all that sort of thing. So I want to say that if you have any questions, again, the one thing you can do is always contact me directly, phone me. You can get in touch through email, or you can stop in and see me in person. You've completed the presentation, and just be sure to submit the required training forms to document and get credit for completing this session. Thank you very much.